What's up, wild animals? I'm Melanie Vesey, and welcome to another Promotional Rescue talk show. I'm a stand-up comedian, actress, and filmmaker, and if you want to see any of my work, my comedy special, my movies, you can do that over at melanievesey.com. But I'm also a promotions consultant with my own company called Promotional Rescue, where I teach people how to promote themselves without feeling gross. And if you want to know more about what I do, who I work with, what my services are, you can get all that information over at promotionalrescue.com. But this is how the talk show works. I talk with my guests about how they have dealt with their promotional journey, and all of that happens on my social media. You can watch that all for free. But then I have a more in-depth conversation with my guests over on my Patreon, and it's totally worth it. And if you want to support the show, if you want to throw a little money at me, I won't be mad at you. You can do that over at patreon.com/Melanie Vesey. And you can hear and watch all of my episodes there if you make a donation. So on the show today, I have my dear pal, Eli Gesner. And Eli and I were kids growing up in New York City together, teenagers. And Eli went on to do some incredible stuff. So he is the co-founder of Zoo York and Shut Skates. He also worked on Phat Farm and Baby Phat. He was the consultant for How to Make It in America. He wrote and directed a movie called Condemned. And this all got started in his graffiti nightlife, skateboarding life in his early part of his life. And he's also going to be a part of a new documentary called All the Streets Are Silent, which sounds fucking incredible. Eli is so smart and such a good guy, and he's one of those people where it's like every time he talks, so many gems fall out of his mouth, and we have such a great conversation. But over on the Patreon version of this, you know, he talked about some pretty incredible stuff that he had to deal with some of the heavy hitters that he had to encounter working on major brands, which is something that is, I mean, we can all learn from that. So I really hope you enjoy this conversation. Eli is so great. You need to follow him at @OcuLarge. All of that is in the description here. Follow, favorite, and fawn over him. Believe me, this guy is amazing. When he turned 50, he released this playlist called Discos in Your Ass. And it was so funny, so genius. Everything he makes is like so much fun, and I just adore him. So enjoy the interview. Bye. Hi, Eli.
Hi, Melanie. How you doing?
I'm so good. How are you? It's so good to see your fucking face, man.
I know it's been a while. I'm coming to you live from Christopher Street in New York City.
I'm jealous. I'm jealous. I'm so jealous. But I know that you're East Coast, West Coast, right?
Yeah,
you do a little LA, you do a little New York, and now you're in the New York for the beautiful snow and for America's season finale. You're going to be
I mean, if I told you this was going to happen when we met as teenagers, I mean, everyone would have just laughed.
Well, I mean, we were kind of catching up before we got started, so we were trying to figure out how long we've known each other, but it's definitely been 30 plus years.
Easily late 80s?
Yes.
When did you move to New York?
85.
Yeah, so I talked about this before and you laughed like it was silly. So you're not a native New Yorker. You moved there in 85.
Yeah.
So if you don't know, people, if you are born and raised in New York in Manhattan, it's very much, especially when you're a teenager, at least it was in the 80s, it's like a small town. Everybody knows everybody who's at whose school, and everyone knows this is that girl and this guy does that, and they're going out and these guys are in a gang, et cetera, et cetera. and I remember like skateboarding and like hanging out in Washington Square Park, and like people get bored of talking, and it was like, you know, it was like Letterkenny, like someone was like, there's this new girl who moved into school, you know, and we're like, oh yeah, who's that? Like Melanie, parents down in Soho. And I was like, oh, all right, cool. And it was like kind of interesting. Like there's like somebody new who's coming into the mix, you know? And and then I remember you vividly. You were kind of a skate Betty too. You were like,
oh my God. I have to say that like the sound of skateboards was always just totally like, huh, who's here? What, you know what I mean? Like it's in my bones, you know, to be like the sound of skateboards. And you know, I went to humanities. I went to New York City Public High School, and for the first 3 years of school, So graffiti writers, skateboarders, like nightlife people, those were my people.
Yeah.
And I was so blessed to fall into that world with you guys. And because so many of you have gone on to do incredible things. And
Shucks.
no, really, I mean, you being one of them. I mean, we were just talking about it before. I mean, co-founder of Zoo York, Shut Skates, Phat Farm, Baby Phat, I mean, you've written and directed movies. I mean, you're a part of culture. I mean, at this point,
I'm very lucky to, I mean, one of the other things is that I guess I get kind of, not that I get bored, but I have a lot of interests, and I sort of get like periodically, I have a panic attack where I'm like, I can't do any more with this. And I've always wanted to do that. So then I just kind of jump ship, sometimes to my own detriment, but life is about living life. You get one go round,
But that's also too, I feel like, a very artistic experience. We do stuff, and then we either hit a roadblock or we tire of it, and then we want to do something else. And I think for many years people kind of look down on hyphenates. Oh, I'm a writer, director, blah 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 blah. But now as we're aging, I'm totally like, I have like 5 hyphenates to my name. And also too, now you have to wear multiple hats simply because you have to do multiple things in your business. You know what I mean? You have to be the person who's hiring and firing, and you have to do the person that's doing the design work and the promotion and the blah, 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 and reaching out and sales. And I mean, oh my God, we're all wearing all these hats. And that's why I talk to people so much about promotion, because I feel like promotion gets such a bad rap, and people, of course, have done terrible things to it,
Well, I don't know. You have to define that for me. I think people find it distasteful, as I do, but I don't think it, what do you mean like it has a bad rap?
Well, because I feel like self-promotion. So if you think about when we were coming up, so, we're around the same age, and what I was taught early on was that, as an actress, I went to Adler after I danced, I was a dancer, I went to Juilliard, and then I switched to Adler. And as an actress, it was like, what I watched was, Jack Nicholson punching out paparazzis. Like, I watched Sean Penn kicking, people in the dick, like, get the fuck away from me. Or Bjork, like going nuts on somebody in an airport. And it was like, if you were exposed as a person, it meant death to your career.
Oh, I don't know if I got that from it. I think more so a better example of then and now, in my opinion, would be how if you were in a famous group, that having one of your songs used on a commercial was like a nail. They were done. A nail in the coffin. Your brand, you're just over with. I think like Captain and Tennille got, I don't know what it was for, like an underarm deodorant or something. And it was like they were already dead for 10 years and I still felt bad for them, like, oh God, Captain and Tennille, like
now
they've been their integrity has been compromised.
Yes.
That's the point. What's
I mean Iggy Pop, Deborah Harry, Blondie, cruise ships, Lust for Life.
No, even beyond that, I'm talking about the new generation.
Yes.
Who's the white rapper who does the Doritos commercial?
Which
and in the
one?
commercial, I don't know, Post Malone. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
And in the commercial, he agreed to have a Doritos logo tattooed on his face, which to me is just like the antichrist of having any kind of integrity. But that's it. That's the proof of I made it, nowadays.
So I feel like that hurts my soul when the fact that somebody got a fucking Doritos logo tattooed on their face.
I hope it's not for real, but...
What I'm hoping, and my goal is that I'm trying to get everything in the middle, where it's like you're promoting and it feels good. It doesn't feel like you're selling out. It doesn't feel like you're hurting yourself in any way, shape, or form. However, you do sometimes have to move out of that comfort zone to get some of this fucking shit done, right? So it's totally like, what does this mean as far as like, is this going to bring more opportunities so I can have better decisions or move myself in a direction that I can do this? Or is this going to be something that I'm going to feel bad about and then pull back and turn the lights off, which is what I see independent artists doing a lot because they do a lot of exhaustion. And that's my goal, is to not have that. I want people to continue to long term.
Yeah, I mean, so I mean, I, I'm born and raised in New York by artists, and this has always been sort of the selling out and the promotion idea
Yeah.
is intrinsic to being an artist, but it also is the double-edged sword. And I'll tell you
Yes.
why.
Yes.
Because if you are not compromising yourself, this is what I believe in, X, Y, and Z, and I'm doing it, and fuck if you don't like it, that is genuine art. The moment that you start putting a Dorito on your face, you are semiotically, through symbolism, announcing that you might be compromising who you are and what you believe in for money. So it's being a whore, and it's strange that our society, the Kim Kardashian, Paris Hilton kind of like fame machine that Instagram has built, is what, a 25-year-old artist now has come up in. And that's almost part of it, where it's like, I feel so removed from younger artists now when I try to talk to them, because the point is they're doing the art to get rich. Whereas I come from a generation who was like, I'm doing the art because it's all I can do, sort of. And it's almost like an act of defiance,
Yes.
But having said that, I mean, I'm sure my dad growing up knew a bunch of people who were factory workers and secretaries, and there was much more of a workforce. Now that's sort of been automated. So, there's maybe people who shouldn't be being artists who are now being artists and are making lots of money doing it. Because you know why? I mean, being mediocre is a really, really serious skill set. To be able to speak to simpletons is important. I mean, and there's lots of comedians I could use examples of. I'm not going to do that, but there's some comedians who people who have high school educations gravitate to, and then others that people can't. And there's music like that, and there's art like that.
Yes, and it is the road gets wide and narrow depending on how you want to reach that audience. So, like I said, you've done so many things, and this is why I really wanted to talk with you, because I mean, God, when you have to, get to the point where, you're getting your skate wear and boards to an audience, or your movie, or, fashion, or whatever it is that you're working on, how have you kind of dealt with that, getting it to an audience component, but also like what you were saying, like keeping your integrity and all of that?
I think it's, from my point of view, and this is nothing I ever went to school for, it's something that happened organically. And I think the two things that happened to me very young, the first one was being a graffiti writer and graffiti art. And the art world that my parents came from, the fine art world, is sort of a very private, very introspective, self-serving world where I'm going to be in my studio and do my pieces and then have my show, but my show is representative of who I am. And I think a lot of people, what they don't understand, especially about 1980s New York City graffiti, was it was competition based. And it was a public statement. So if you did artwork and you put it on a train or on the wall, besides the fact that you did it, it had to be you either had to have clout from being a seasoned veteran or be so skilled that people were less likely to deface what you did.
Yes.
So there was, when I started writing graffiti, it suddenly turned from, I want to draw a superhero with the thing. And then it started turning into like, what's that person going to think? What's that person going to think? And I got to look about that. And this is what's cool. And it starts like changing it starts becoming a performance. It doesn't, it's not just static art. So that's sort of like, and that happened to me when I was really young. So, I kind of was like, oh, all right, well, this is for everybody else. It's not necessarily for me. And there were things that I would draw that were just for me. And, I would keep them hidden away. But then I always would have my little piece book, but everything was to show other people. which may be what a lot of people think art is anyways. And the second thing that happened was the nightclub thing.
Yeah.
So, when you're a kid in New York, that's just what you do. We're all going to go to the club. Fuck it. Free drinks, So, and we were lucky enough to be in the era of the club kid when that first started. So before the mid to late 80s, maybe they were letting a cool, some like, I don't know who, Bianca Jagger's nephew in when he was 13, but most people weren't getting in. We happened to just like luck into this little moment where people stopped going out to nightclubs like around the end of the Danceteria era. And to try to hype it up, they started letting 13, 14, 15-year-old kids into clubs before 10 o'clock. You had to get there early, and they had open bar for us. So you'd go to the tunnel. You're laughing if you were there.
People don't believe
it's absurd. It's so illegal. And we would show up, and so we would all be there. It's everyone from school, everyone from Washington Square Park. We're getting free, I don't know what, Long Island iced teas.
Vodka, cheap fucking vodka. Yeah.
Girl, I'll house you, drink tickets. And then by the time it gets to be like 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, when the adults started showing up, at first glance, it looks like, hey, the dance floor's going off.
Yes.
But it was all pubescent children.
Yes. It's so funny, but I'm sober 26 years now, which is like insane. But when I tell people, thank you very much. But when I tell people that when I moved to New York City in 1985, that I was, 14 years old and I would get served if I could just see over the bar. Like, I've never been carded in my fucking life. You know what I mean? And then once you start all those relationships, the fucking bouncer and the door girl and then the list girl and the DJ. And then I will never forever have to fucking ask anybody to, like, you just go. And they're
you don't even have to wait online.
And
What's up, Mel? Come on.
Exactly.
Here's some drink tickets.
And I feel like that unto itself, and it's so funny that I do this now because I would be friends with all of the promoters and the DJs, and they would give me a stack of flyers when I would go to their parties, and they would be like, hey, when you go out, give these to people. You know what I mean?
Well, that's what I wanted to get into.
Yeah.
Because that's promotion.
Yes.
So that was
started.
Right. So I wasn't doing that. I was skateboard. I was going to art school, skateboarding, and going out at night. And my mom, and I was living with my mom. I was 17, 18. And, and she'd give me $20 and I'd hit the road. And then, I'm fucking off in school. I'm trying to get pictures in Thrasher. I don't care about all this nonsense. And she kind of got mad at me and was like, you're getting too old for this. If you're not going to make your grades and be a student, like you can't go out anymore. So she cut me off from going out. And she said, you can't go out till you get a job. And I was like, yeah. And I was like, and that literally my brain at that point was like, I don't need to fucking go out. Like I'd rather, all I need to do is skateboard and draw and I'll be fine. And that's really what happened. And that lasted a whole 2 weeks. And I'll tell you what happened. Carter Smith, who you might know, Carter Smith called me up and was like, dude, where have you been? And I was like, my mom cut me off. I'm not going out anymore. He said, listen, they're opening up this new club called Mars. And they're looking for promoters. They hired me and I can get you $100 a day to hand out passes. And I was like that. And also that's like $1,989. That's like
$500. Yeah. I mean, it's insane. Yeah, exactly.
And I was like, what? And I was like, why? And they're like, the money is for getting into clubs, drinks, and for cabs. And you can keep what's ever left over. Yeah. And I was like, oh, so what do I do? He's like, come over to my house. So I went over to his house and he had like a box of all the passes and he was like, we're just going to go out. And I'm like, what's open? It was like, oh, MK, we got to go here, go to Nell's. And this is the places we go anyways. And I was like, all right. And then like the only difference was now I had a messenger bag.
A bag, yeah. Mm-hmm.
With the passes in the bag. So it wasn't that goofy. Like you're not walking around like a dork. You could just slip your hand in the bag and slip someone a pass.
Yeah, yeah. Uh-huh.
Right. So I started doing that, and then people would be like, "What's Mars?" Because it didn't open yet. It was like pre-promo. Then when it opened, and then it was like the hot shit. Suddenly, everybody was like, "Oh, Eli, he can get me in." And then it started like that's how it happened. And then I kind of got promoted into being like one of the top promoters. And I was just there all the time, and it was once I like Carter brought me in and I got to meet everybody, then it was sort of like my first entree into going to a club in the daytime when it's just no sounds, no lights. It's just dead, giant vacuous spaces, a couple of people cleaning up here and there. And
smells like beer and cigarettes and vomit.
Yeah, awesome. And it's all to myself,
Yeah.
And then like I started going with my buddy Beasley, who you are well aware, rest in peace. Yeah. And like me and Beasley would go there, and they had like a little art room, and we would like steal spray paint and like go up onto the elevated Highline tracks and do pieces, and why we were hanging out there. But then. Speaking of promotion, this is a sidebar promotional tidbit that is something that I tell all my people who used to work for me or interns or stuff, which is that what it's technically called is called hanging around the hoop. That's what we call it. So you want to play a basketball game and you got no friends but a basketball? Even if you don't have a basketball, go to the fucking hoop. Yes. Just hang out there. And sooner or later, someone's going to show up. So we would have, flash forward to Zoo York when we were like major and we needed to hire people constantly. I sort of had this like shitty stretch, like a 6-month stretch where it was like being ordered to hire people. People would come in with their resumes, people I've never met in my life. It looked good. And, and they're like, yeah, I did this, that, and the other thing. And I'm like, all right, you're hired, And then they show up for work, and then by the end of the next week, I realized I've just been lied to.
Yes. Yeah.
So once that happened, we had this other army of interns. We had like a little troop of like 5 interns who would work with us. And anytime a new job came up, I was like, I'm hiring one of these guys because I know these guys. I know that this guy's good at that. This guy's bad at this. This guy can be trusted. This guy can't be trusted. And so I knew what I was dealing with. Yes. So anybody who's ever asked me if they know what they want to do for their living, I want to be in the music industry. I want to do this. I was always like, don't go to college. If you can get your parents to support you on the $30,000 that you would have used for the college, just go to the place you want to work, walk in there and be like, I'll do anything. Because just from me and Beasley hanging out in the club and just, oh, Beasley and Eli, like, what's up? They would just start asking us to do stuff because they knew who we were and we were trusted and we were coming back. So it's like it starts off like, oh, here's $50, go get us all burritos, But then it starts turning into like, oh, all right, well, you're bringing in people and like, we can trust you, like opening up a party, Yeah. So that, as far as promotion, also is a big thing. And that was difficult for me because, again, my history of growing up was always, oh, you're selling out if you're out there in the public and you're look at me, but there's a fine line you can walk,
Yes. And that's what I was saying about the Jack Nicholson, punching the paparazzi is just totally like there needed to be some sort of anonymity. But now it's the exact opposite. If you're not being seen, and it's almost like what you're saying about hanging out around the hoop, like that's essentially what social media is. Like, because you can do it on an international level. You know what I mean? It's like, Go and find the people that you find aspirational, follow them, engage, comment, grow relationships, do that. That's how those connections are made. And so what you were also saying too about your company, and you were totally like we do make decisions based on the people that we know, right? And when we're watching someone, and that's how we live our life now. You're watching me online, right? Do you see me consistently? Do you like what you see? And so we're doing this performance in a way that we can be considered in the future, right? And so And just like a club, hey, you get 1,000 people in the door, cool. You're going to get a bigger club where you have to get 5,000 people through the door, right? But did you know how to get the 1,000 people through the door? And now it's like the 5,000 people through the door.
You know, it's guerrilla warfare. You got to figure it out as you go along. What's very funny now that you state it is, you know, that like because of COVID, there's like the overused comedic trope now of the person on the Zoom phone call and then the wide shot, their house is a disaster and they're in their underwear, you know? I mean, that's show business, right?
Oh, absolutely. It is a business called show. And like, it is, do not be fooled. And everybody's always like, you always look so great. And I'm like, yeah, because I don't get on fucking camera with no fucking makeup on. You know what I mean? Like,
it's magic. It is. Yeah. It's, you know, you're presenting somebody and you know, I guess I've always, whether I want to admit it or not, I've had a show off in me being a skateboarder and all that stuff, you know? So maybe I do remember when I first started handing out passes, the first, like when I was like, this is the day I'm going into MK with a bag full of passes from another club. And I'm going to confront as many people as I can and hand them passes. That's different than like, I'm going out to go talk to girls and get drunk, you know? And there was, it made me super self-conscious and I felt a bit like a sucker in some ways, but then, and you know, you would give hand passes to people and they'd throw them on the floor or throw them back at you. Some people were excited though. People would say, can I get more? You know, and you're like, oh yeah. One of the funny things, speaking of PR, that Mars did, which they didn't realize how effective it is. A lot of times in life, you know, these happy accidents happen. Yeah,
of course. Oh my God, you have to stumble into something sometimes. It's absolutely, yes.
I would like to think, I've made it a point to try and like be more honest about that. People have congratulated me on things that I was just like a random work of God. So, you know, one of those things was, we went to go hand out the passes and we went in there and they literally had boxes, you know, like giant cardboard boxes, grosses of Mars bar candy bars, you know, the yellow ones or the like kind of like beige with the Mars candy bars. And we were like, oh, can I take these? And the owners were like, yeah, give them out. You know, it's like a promotional thing. But that was where the limit of their thinking was that, like, I mean, if you're handing out 1,000 passes and you've got 20 candy bars, who's special enough? You know what? You look like you need a candy bar. This candy bar is going to make you want to come here. Right. But guess who wanted fucking candy bars? Children. The bouncers and the door people.
Oh, okay.
So after the first 2 nights, everybody in the city knew me and Carter Smith were the guys with the candy bars. And we would walk up and there'd be 200 people trying to get in. And they would be like, you two, come here. I'm like, what's up with the candy bars? Because they can't leave. They're stuck, you know? And we're like, candy bar for you, candy bar for you. Have a nice day. And, you know, that was
ruthless. I mean, working the front door of a club. I mean, you're standing there sometimes for 7 hours on your feet and people are mad at you. People who are trying to give you money and you're like, I don't want to let you in, but that's fucking $500 and you're having this like struggle within yourself. And then I mean, it is a whole fucking whirlwind of things working the door of a club, you know, like trying to keep the fucking ratio of guys to girls and like, it's a rough gig. Is Prince parked in the limo outside waiting to come in? And like, I mean, it's crazy. I mean, I worked the door at Nell's for like one party and it's like, I'm still scarred by it.
I was walking to the Palladium once when I wasn't promoting and on the subway, I think I found like an Arthur C. Clarke novel, like a book. Yeah. I was like, oh, I fucking love this story. Or maybe it was like Kurt Vonnegut. Like, let's say it was Slaughterhouse-Five. I was like, wow, Slaughterhouse-Five is one of my favorite books. And I remember going to the Palladium and waiting to get in line. And Kenny is there with the makeup and the whole thing. Yeah. And he like finally lets us in. And I could see it was the Palladium and just people. And he like let me in. I was like, hey, man, I know how it is here. And I gave him the book. And he looked at it. And then just broke out in tears, like hugged me.
Oh, I mean, it's so funny, but I was trying to explain, to my wife and my kid that I've been in rooms with open gunfire like 4 times. Like, sure. In front of the Palladium. I can't even remember the guy's name who used to work there. I mean, they were shooting it up. We had to like duck and then run in before the doors closed. And like I was a go-go dancer at the Red Zone for a short period of time.
That's a very gun positive.
And then, oh my God. Yeah. The sound of 22s, I will never fucking recover, And
I've watched 2 friends of mine get shot. Like I've watched them and been like, I literally remember at Webster Hall at some hip hop party watching a huge fight between my friends and some other hood crew. And I remember watching this guy like, what's this guy doing? I was like, this guy better not have a gun. Why is he coming up behind my friends? And I was like, oh shit. And I just watched him like shoot my friend in the leg.
Oh my God.
Which isn't funny. Guys, it's not funny.
It's not. Well, and I am someone who's actually been shot, so I
was not going to say that offhand.
I can't laugh about these.
She's been shot. We'll leave it at that.
I can't laugh about these things. However, it's just because tragedy plus time. It has been enough time.
It's true.
That I can laugh about these things. However, not funny.
No.
But
I've been shot at. I've heard the bullets go by my ears.
It was a crazy time, but what we're talking about in general is how to make an impression, right? How to keep relationships. That's what public relations are. It's just relationships. Oh, I have something of value and it is a fucking candy bar. Or I have something of value. I understand how that works and I've talked about it. And so now you're going to come to me to be that person that can fucking talk about this thing.
Yeah, and it's also a lot of it. You know what? I don't know if you've talked about this, but you should. My mom, when I was a kid, read How to Make Friends and Influence People.
Yeah, well, it's funny that you say that, but Maria Bamford is one of my clients, and
I love Maria Bamford.
I know. It's funny because I run her social media, and I see you liking some of her stuff sometimes, and I'm like, oh, look at Eli.
I'm going to have to talk to you about that.
But she took, I think, whatever the workshop is or the course that guy wrote. She took it twice. I think she talks about it in one of her specials.
Oh, yeah. I think you're right. Yeah.
And I have heard her talk about it, so I know a little bit about it, not a lot.
So it's an olden timey book, I think from like the 40s. I'm not sure, but it's basically this guy who was a very charming guy, salesman, and it was kind of the first how to do it. And I remember being a kid and it was in the bathroom and you're taking a shit. Back in the day before iPhones, you would read and.
You actually had to be there. You actually had to be in that moment. You couldn't.
Exactly. Yeah. Uh-huh. And I remember looking at this giant book and I got to go skateboarding. I don't have time for this. So I'm flipping through it and I found one, little anecdote or a chapter I read. And it was him being like, okay, I went to the DMV. Everyone goes to the DMV. It fucking sucks. The lady who's working there hates it. I don't want to be there. I want to get my ticket paid and get my new thing and get out of here. And so he's waiting online, looks up the line, and he's like, all right, I'm going to this woman or this man. It was like a guy. And then he was like, all right, well, I got to make this guy like me, and I got to make him want to, serve me, and not, and also, and maybe, and even though it's an insincere, arguably way, maybe lighten their life a little bit because it's just like giving the book to Kenny. And he said, as he's walking up, the guy who wrote the book says, I am bald and it's something I've struggled with my whole life. And the miserable guy at the DMV had this amazing head of hair. So when he walked up to the things, he was like, listen, man, I've been looking at your hair the whole time. You got great hair. And then the guy was like, thank you so much, dude. And what can I do for you? And blah, blah, blah. Now it's a strange conundrum because in a way it's malicious. It's it's selfish. But at the same time, it's not, it's like he helped someone out in a bad situation. And beyond all of that, it's honest, know? And I think that's really the thing that I personally dealing with the distastefulness of that was as long as it is something that is 100% true, and that I could argue he does have a good head of hair. I am bald. If I can do that, then it's for fucking real. And it doesn't matter if I'm doing it for ulterior motives or not, as long as no one's getting hurt. And I think, I think in a way, not to bring up politics here, but I think that a lot of people have been basically just being lied to, to further someone's career through promotions is just, I'm going to tell you everything you want to hear. It's pimp talk. It's just lies to keep the machine going. Yeah. And it's corrupt and it's terrible. So for me, I've always been like, okay, well, at least this is real, So that to me was the thing, my keel, like this is my guiding star for all of this. Yeah, no,
I really can't. It's like, even though I have a show about promotion and I do all of this stuff, I'm always like, this has to come from a real, genuine place inside of you. Yeah. And douchebags don't often wonder if they're douchebags. They just do it. Do you know what I mean? So if you are somebody that is reflective on this and you don't want to be a douchebag, by design, you will be conscious of that. So it's like, give yourself the credit of just being like, hey, you're already worried about it. You know what I mean? So, which is good, and that will help you, right? However, what ends up happening though sometimes is people take it too far, and then they don't want to be seen, and they don't want to kind of like be visible with what they do.
Because you can fool some of the people some of the time, but you can't fool all the people all the time.
Exactly.
As Thomas Jefferson said. Yeah.
Yeah, but I also...
Someone find that out in the comments. Correct me.
Right. Someone, please. Can you please Google that? However, I do think that... is it Eric Clapton? Or who else sung it, though? Somebody else sung it in a song.
It sounds about right.
Oh, no. Reggae. It's a reggae. Maybe Eric Clapton covered it, but I think it might have been Bob Marley.
Once again, everyone, please do all the busy work for us.
Please correct me on that. Yeah.
Do the research.
Right. So I feel like what's so challenging and what you're talking about I think what's so hard right now is that artists have to earn. They have to earn to make a living. And I feel like when they work sometimes at a shitty job, they're driving for Lyft or what have you, and life gets hard, right? So there is this moment where you have to step into the visibility for what you do, right? And it's not necessarily for fame. It's just to keep it going. It's like, oh, I'm going to show you guys my art. I'm going to show you my movie. I'm going to show you my book. I'm going to show you my music. I'm going to show you my company so you can see it, so it can make more money, so it can actually stay afloat, right? So we do have to take a page out of that book of going, what you talked about was like all city, right? I'm going to put this on the train car, and it's going to fucking leave the station, and it's going to go all the way around until it gets buffed that night. You know what I mean? So there it is, So how can we go all city and feel good about it, right? It's got to be good.
I think, and here, speaking of promotion, let me throw this out at you. And I know that you're a comedian and you deal with a lot of comedians. Yeah. I'm not a stand-up comedian.
It's very funny.
I had entertained the idea, but for a very, very hilarious long story, I'll tell you after this. I decided not to go do that. But the one of the things that I think is important is when I watch, because I'm a huge fan of comedians, when I watch them talk about their careers and how they got famous, it's all about the material and the notebook, But I, as an observer and as an engineering kind of sciencey guy, I was like, you know what? I don't even think the comedians are fully appreciating what it is. It's not the joke. It is the manipulation of the audience. Because you're not writing a notebook full of jokes and everyone works. It is the audience who is the comedian's project. I think Steve Martin said any comedian could go up on stage and be great one night, but only the best can go up every night and be good.
Yes.
And I was like, oh. And then also, I think another great example of this is Jim Carrey talking about something early on in his career, and he got fed up with jokes and he was just making noises or acting strange, and he could be like, oh, if I do this, the audience does that. It's like a communicative thing.
Yes.
And
call and response. Yeah.
Exactly. And I feel like a lot of people who do comedy are just like, I'm trying this joke out. Oh, this joke didn't work, so I'm crossing it off. And I think that that's not really doing the work. The work, if there is a joke you believe in and no one laughed at it, I say just keep trying it, until you find the right audience. And then it starts turning into, and again, I'm just speaking from imagination, because it's not something I've ever done, is when you're one of the, I'm a touring stand-up comic in the United States, all right, I'm going to South Carolina, can't do this, can't do that. Oh, I'm going to San Francisco, totally doing this one.
Yes.
Oh, I'm going down to Florida, doing this stuff. Yeah. Or even the audience, Yeah.
You are totally right. And it is a relationship with an audience. And it's even interesting sometimes where it's not even like what you're saying. A lot of it is just sometimes the cadence, like da 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 da, and they know that instinctually. Oh, that's when it's time to laugh, or you put more energy into it, or the word that you choose has more P's in it because it's staccato, and so it's a relationship with an audience, yes, which is something that when I'm working with artists, I'm totally like, you do this already with your artwork or with your music or with whatever it is that you're doing. How can you also transmit also to your promotional thing? Because I think that sometimes artists are just totally like, well, I can't be good at business. I was told I can't be good at business.
Oh, yeah. All right. Well, we'll get into that.
Which drives me crazy because I'm like, you can, and you are.
That's not true. Some great artists are capable of it.
Well, yes, but but I do feel like, though, when we tell people or when we keep that message alive, it turns off in people that they can't be good at the business side of it. And I think that you can even if you're not great, you can be better at it. You can understand how it works, or you can work in a relationship with people that you hire them to make sure that they're doing a good job. Because, yes, that relationship with that audience is so important. And you are making decisions. Yes.
The point I wanted to bring up is it is the exact same thing as the guy waiting online at the DMV. There's no difference.
Yeah.
Except you're not looking at a guy and being like, okay, well, I want something from him. In this case, I want laughs, and I know I'm in Georgia. I can't talk about this. So it is psychological manipulation is key to it. It's psyops, as spies in the military would have you talk about it. And that's really part of what I do is look at like, all right, I'm trying to achieve this goal. This is where I need to be operating. Would X, Y, and Z work? And if not, would A, B, and C work? So, I mean, that also starts becoming, in a big way, that almost the promotion of it is the art itself. As I told you before, when we started this, one of the things I always go back to whenever I'm working on a project and I've invested months or years into something, I always go back to the phrase, if a tree falls in the woods and there's no one there to hear it, does it make a noise?
Yeah.
So people out there, if you've put so much effort into making something that you really believe in, and you don't do a good job promoting it, it could be something awesome, but no one's ever seen it. How many great movies or songs or books that you love that nobody knows about, and then you hip them to it, and your friend, they're like, well, how do I not know about this?
Yeah.
I mean, that to me, for me, I'm always like, that's, I know that I've got a good sense of taste, but then it's also like, how did this thing that is genuinely, loved by everybody I show it to, granted they're all my friends, so we probably all have similar tastes.
Yeah.
How did this not, reach the level of where it is? And that starts turning into like the promotion zeitgeist kind of weird thing that you don't have control over.
Yes.
Two of my favorite movies of all time are made in 1982 or 83, 82, which is Blade Runner and John Carpenter's The Thing. Okay. Both of those movies to this day are, fanatics. People love it. They made sequels. Everyone loves it. Box office failures.
Flops.
No one liked them because for some reason, it was the summer of E.T. I saw E.T. 4 times, in the movie theaters. Now, why is that? Why? And I'll tell you when the last time I watched E.T. Decades ago.
Yeah,
I haven't watched E.T. in 30 years, but I watched Blade Runner and I watched The Thing regularly, know? So, and I'm not the only one,
Yes.
If you go to Comic-Con, I'm sure there's an ET guy walking around once in a while, but there's always somebody dressed up as Blade Runner, and people are stoked on McCready.
Daryl Hannah, pleasure model, or whatever.
Exactly. So it's like so that's the other thing that I always think about, which again is the zeitgeist that you absolutely have no control over.
Yeah.
I think a good modern example of that is the guy Dogface.
Oh my God, totally.
Fleetwood Mac and the cranberry juice. That wasn't his first try.
No.
That guy has a whole Instagram account of him doing similar shit for years.
Yeah.
Why did this one work? Why did this one work?
So what you're talking about is something that we can't control, which is magic. We can't control magic. However,
I call it the zeitgeist because it's German.
Yeah, we can't control magic. However, I do feel like you can, in the best of your ability, prepare for it. So how can you prepare for it? What you were talking about is having the best product, right? Which means not necessarily the best thing ever, but the best thing that you've made. You need to be proud of it. I'm never going to tell you that promotion is the only thing that's going to carry you long term, because I feel like in keeping with that integrity, in keeping with feeling good about what that is, trying to do the best possible version of it and marrying it with understanding that you've got to take it to an audience, and hopefully that magic will strike. And the magic might strike in a weird way, which is like in E.T. it was big that summer, but then Blade Runner, it's carried over fucking 30 years. And there's remakes of it and people are dressing like it. And we all pray at the altar of Rachel. I mean, give me a break, So.
I always bring this up to people, especially in the film industry. It's a Wonderful Life.
Oh, I love this movie.
Do you love it?
It's
an American classic, isn't it?
I do.
Okay.
I watch it every
why it's an American
year.
classic? Do you want?
Why?
You know why?
Why?
It tanked at the box office. It was such a huge failure. It was such a monumental failure that the RKO or whoever made it, they didn't even re-up the copyrights on it so that it became public domain. Flash forward to the late 1960s, early 1970s, television stations start popping up around the United States. It's Christmas time. The people don't want to be there on Christmas Eve. So what do? They find the one free Christmas movie, It's a Wonderful Life, that everyone hated 20 years earlier, and they put it on loop and they go home to their family. And so the entire United States stuck at home, let's watch it on TV. And the only thing on is the free movie, It's a Wonderful Life, just playing on loop. And people are getting drunk with their families and feeling sentimental and being
crying.
This movie's great, man.
Fucking amazing. Frank Capra is a goddamn genius.
But it failed. He probably couldn't get a gig after he made one of the great movies of all time.
So,
it's probably listed on the top 100 movies of all time.
It's so interesting that you say that too, because it's almost like, I don't know, and correct me if I'm wrong or whatever, maybe this is just my opinion, but that I don't know, don't worry maybe if it's good. I don't know, man. Just fucking put it out there. It could be an It's a Wonderful Life situation and you're dead and your fucking shit lives on forever.
Yeah, I mean, the Van Gogh complex. After I'm gone, they'll all know my genius. I think a really good, almost like a weird phenomenon based on that would be fan fiction. It's like, I really love these specific characters from Scooby-Doo, but they should be having sex and chasing a werewolf. And they put it online for free, and people they become fanatical about it.
Yeah.
But that is and nowadays also I'd like to just openly state that as far as being, even though I have done things, I realize that I'm becoming antiquated as to what people want and how people become notable or get eyes on them.
Yeah.
I used to be a master of it. I knew what magazines and TV shows and how to play the game. And we're going to put this out at this quarter. And now constantly I look on Instagram at somebody and I'm like, who's this knucklehead? And 5 million followers.
I know.
And I'm like,
it's like,
how
who?
does this person have 5 million followers?
It is a total fuck. It is. And it's overwhelming. And I think that's why on the other side of that, when you're that person that wants to do that, you're totally like, how does this all happen?
I think what I've been calling it is it's like an algorithmic dice roll. There's no rhyme or reason to it. It's just like the dog face. It should be called the dog face factor. It's like, there's no, who knows why. Well, I do know that. I mean, and I do this for multiple people. And exactly. You must have a better understanding of it than I do. I do
know that consistency. Well, of course, having something that's great, and it takes a while to find out what that thing is. Do you know what I mean?
It
takes a minute to figure out who your audience is, right? But then, consistency.
That's important. That's the most important thing.
Consistently doing it, because if you only do one and then you don't check in for another 6 months, it's like, well, so you have to consistently do it. It's the laying the groundwork so that the magic can then like hit and then fucking like propel you to a certain extent. Because there's also the difference between back then, it was that like people would develop you. They would give you money to figure this out, or they would have professionals to help you, which now is not necessarily the truth. You have to understand this for yourself, and you have to figure out what works and what's not working, and be honest with yourself about what's working and what's not working, and keep at it.
Yes, you're correct. Another little anecdote I frequently bring up is Roy Lichtenstein, the painter. Right. If you don't know, he's the guy who does the comic book paintings with all the dots and the red and the yellow and the blue, and got famous for it. So I watched a documentary on him and his life. And I'm like, oh, that's very interesting. And they show the whole breadth of his great accomplishments and, 5-story sculptures of metal with his paint smears and shit. And there's always that element of like, well, I could do that, So the end of the documentary comes, the last, last scene of the film in Provence, France, just the woods and the lush lawn and the sun setting, and there's a lake. There's acres and acres and acres and acres. And it says the Lichtenstein estate. And it pans down and he's there painting a watercolor landscape of this, photorealistic, beautiful.
Yeah.
And the director's like, you can paint. He's like, yeah, of course I can fucking paint. And they're like, well, then why don't you do this? He's like, nobody wants it from me. They want the dots. They want the smears and the comics. That's why I'm going down in history. I look at all this land I own. I'm a multimillionaire. I'm one of the most famous artists ever. But this is what the people wanted. They more dictated what I want. This painting is for me. I'm loving sitting here and painting my woods. My private woods. My
190 acres. Thank you very much.
Yeah. And then that's another one of the conundrums.
Yes. Well,
go on.
Well, I was going to say in David Byrne's book, Speaking About Music or something, he talks about that as well, which is that the platforms also too, and the way that they are, the platforms, the way that they're built, the way that they have you listen to 10 seconds of it. So then you're creating songs so that you have an exciting moment that happens during that. Like, so then that changes you as the artist as to like what you're fucking creating, because you have to meet the audience where they're at, which then changes the decisions that you make about what you're putting out there. So
yeah. There's a similar anecdote is you guys might not remember this, but in the 60s there were these, I guess, Greek Hercules movies. Like super low budget B Hercules movies that were dubbed into English, and they were complete trash. And there's this, I forget who it is, but there's some famous film anecdote of the film producer the two film producers meet, and the guy's like, you got to check out my Hercules movies. I've been making money off these things. And the guy sits through this shitty Hercules movies. And then he's like, oh, I want you to watch the trailer, you know? And he plays in the trailer, and he watches the trailer, and then he's like, what do you think? He's like, well, I think you just took all the good moments in this crappy movie and cut them into a 2-minute trailer. He's like, yeah, but you don't know that till you see the movie.
Yes. Yes.
So that's the
and then sometimes bad trailer means good movie because they didn't fuck it. Like sometimes I'm totally like, is the trailer too good? And then there's been times where I've seen a bad trailer and I've liked the movie and I'm just totally like, what the fuck are you? What?
I have my phenomenon with that is personal expectations. If there's something I'm interested in and somebody I trust says it sucks, almost unilaterally, it's better. I'm like, that movie wasn't so bad because I went in thinking that it sucks. And inversely, if the person's like, my mind, that happened like with Donnie Darko. Like everybody I know was like, did you see Donnie Darko? It's Donnie Darko. And I was like, no. And then I went in expecting to have my mind blown. And I was like, what the fuck is this? Like, and it's like not a bad movie. I like the movie, but it was like it got built up by a series of people who I hold in high regard. I actually think I watched it. I shared this moment with a friend of mine, a skater friend of mine. We were like, well, let's watch Donnie Darko, and we were watching it, and like halfway through, it was like, this isn't what everyone was hyping it up to be. Like we openly started like talking about it.
Yeah, it's almost like if too many people like it, I'm not going to like it because I'm just totally like, Starbucks, whatever. Oh, Jesus Christ. All right, so I wanna chat with you. We're gonna go over to my Patreon now. We're gonna talk about the best and the worst thing that's ever happened to you because I know it's probably going to be a very juicy story. So
I got a lot of things. Maybe stuff I shouldn't talk about. You'll get out of me.
Okay. You heard it there. So you guys, if you want to keep watching this conversation with my incredible old pal, beautiful, wonderful, amazing pal, Eli Gesner, you can go over to patreon.com/Melanie Vesey. And if you want to follow Eli, Ocularge, I will put that in all at Ocularge. I will put that in all of the notes and all of that stuff so you can follow him. He's totally worth a fawn, a favorite, and a follow. Stay tuned. We're going to go over my Patreon right now. See you guys later. Bye. There it is.
Was that backwards?
No, it was totally right. You can totally hold it up again. You want to hold it up again?
Nah, it's a bad tag. I'll do it
right.
better.
All right. Bye.
Bye.